Congressman LaTourette, thanks for joining us this week.
Sure.
So we've had a busy week here in D.C. Let's start with the policy side of what's happening. Talk to us a little bit about the latest going on with the Highway Trust Fund.
Well, as we've talked about before, the Highway Trust Fund goes broke in August. The House is the House Republicans are working on an extension of the highway program that would go from now until next May. And their proposed way to pay for it is to eliminate Saturday mail service, mail delivery, and basically take those savings and apply it to the trust fund, kind of a Rube Goldberg way of approaching things. The Senate, says at this moment in time they hate it, but they are trying to come up with a shorter 6-month extension that would take us past the election, coincidentally. And they're working on funding mechanisms, but at this moment in time they don't quite have their ducks in a row. But, my prediction is that neither the House or the Senate or the administration is going to let the highway program go bust, because it would literally bring to a halt not only important infrastructure projects, but all the people that are working on them. And I don't think they'll let that happen.
Are we missing an opportunity here? I mean, all of the discussions that are being taken place are about these short-term extensions. None of them are about kind of the long-term health of the Highway Trust Fund. Are we missing an opportunity to do something to fix this?
Well, of course we are, but we've been missing that opportunity now for 10 years. And everybody knew it was going to be a problem. Everybody knows it's a problem. But it takes leadership. It takes leadership from the White House and the House and the Senate. And, it's not rocket science. Somebody has to figure out where the money's going to come from to pay for the improvements to our roads, bridges, pipes in the ground, wastewater treatment plants, a whole host of other things. And there's only so many ways to do it. You can raise the fuel tax. You can find another method like vehicle miles traveled. You can put a toll booth on every mile of interstate highway. You can give the program back to the states. It really doesn't matter which one you pick, but everybody's afraid to pick one because they're afraid that it'll have negative repercussions in the election in November.
So instead we're talking about things like ending Saturday mail service. Hasn't this been something that has been kicked around, not particularly to use it for the Highway Trust Fund, but isn't this something that's been kicked around before and not successfully done? Well,
yeah, but this actually, if you look at the president's budget that he sent up here earlier this year, it's in the president's budget, and so it is an idea that's been kicked around. I think the more controversial piece, at least for members of Congress, is going to be that in addition to ending Saturday mail service, they're talking about shuttering some post offices. And I can tell you, just anecdotally, way back when the Postal Service said that they were going to close the Fairport Harbor, Ohio post office, it was one of the biggest public meetings I ever had. I mean, every senior citizen was there. Everybody was yelling and screaming. And so I think that's the part of the plan that will probably get a little more resistance than others.
It's amazing how those close to home things get people fired.
It was awful.
So next issue I want to talk about is the appropriations process. Obviously, it's one that we've been talking about a lot over the last few months. What's the latest there?
Well, it continues to churn forward. This week, the House pushed out the what's called the THUD bill, which stands for Transportation, Treasury, and Housing and Urban Development. And they went through a number of amendments. There were some disturbing ones. If you happen to like Amtrak, they took aim at some of the long-distance service. The funding is down because of sequestration and other things, but they at least shoved that bill along. And so now I think we're up to 4 or 5 bills having cleared the House, and it's now, the focus is going to be over to the Senate to see if they can get their act together enough to produce bills as well. Everybody knows, of course, that September the 30th is the end of the fiscal year, and all the bills have to be done by then, or you're looking at another stopgap measure. And if you look at the calendar, the congressional calendar, that's going to be tough because we're already into June. The Congress will take go home for the 4th of July recess. They'll take the whole month of August back at home. And then you're to Labor Day and the political season. So there aren't a lot of legislative days to get it done, but that's the bad news. The good news is they do seem to be working sometimes in a bipartisan way to move the ball forward.
And there seems like there's no appetite for a repeat of a government shutdown.
No, I think all the responsible leaders have taken that off the table. So That's not going to occur. The real question is, do we operate after September 30th with a series of temporary spending measures, or are they able to actually put year-long spending bills in place?
Well, the big news that happened this week is political news. There was an election on Tuesday night in Virginia. There's been a lot of primaries that folks have been watching very carefully. This wasn't one people were watching very carefully beforehand. That's Eric Cantor, the majority leader's primary. It's all everyone's talking about in D.C. now. Talk to us a little bit about what happened there.
Well, it's going to be what people are talking about for a long time to come. It's the first time since 1899, which is when the post of majority leader was established, that the majority leader of the House of Representatives has been defeated in a primary election within his or her own party. And the more stunning news that just occurred is that Eric Cantor is resigning as majority leader, and that will set off a series of leadership fights and tussles and everything else that is going to be unprecedented. He's set a date for stepping down of July the 31st, and there's going to be a lot going on. Now, relative to what happened, nobody really saw this coming, but when you're the party leader, you're not home a lot because it's your job to go out and show the flag and raise money for other members who have difficult election challenges. And so as a result, the speaker, the majority leader, the minority leader, they're gone from home all the time. But now that's sometimes dangerous, and it proved to be dangerous here because by not connecting to your district, those are the people that you can't be the majority leader unless you're first a member of Congress. And the numbers that are coming out show that his unpopularity was higher than certainly he ever wanted to be, this professor, the economics professor Bratt, latched on to something that's really a white-hot issue. If you talk to Republican primary voters, the Affordable Care Act and immigration are probably two of the hot-button issues. And he latched on to immigration, said that Leader Cantor was for amnesty, and that doesn't sit well, and certainly didn't sit well in Virginia 7.
So the next big question is kind of what happens next. Who are the names that we're going to start hearing about over the next couple of days and weeks who are likely going to move up in House leadership or come into House leadership?
Well, we can talk about the usual suspects, and of course the way it used to work is there'd be a natural progression. So you would say the number 3 Republican in the House, Kevin McCarthy, the majority whip today, would be elevated, and they would elect a new majority whip. I don't think that this bunch is going to be satisfied with that, and so, and now the question isn't does McCarthy move up, but I think you also have to ask, do they, say, well, while we're at it, let's go take Boehner out, at the same time. And so you could have an entire new slate of Republican leaders in the House. But the names that are popular and being bandied about, you have Paul Ryan, of course, who was the party's vice presidential candidate. He's demurred at the moment because he's going to be the chairman of the Tax Writing Committee. You have Jeb Hensarling, who's the chairman of Financial Services from Texas. You have Mike Mulvaney of South Carolina, who's a pretty conservative guy. You have Raul Labrador of Idaho. And closer to my home, you have Jim Jordan of Ohio. And then you also have to throw in, there's a group in the House called the Republican Study Committee, and the chair of that, which has about 150 of the Republicans in it, is currently Steve Scalise of Louisiana. So, and there may be some other cats and dogs that pop up. You don't know, but at the moment, they're poised to have a series of meetings soon. I'm sure that tweets and emails and everything else are going about in the Capitol. And one of the cruel realities of being in public life, and certainly in the Congress, is that they don't wait for the body to be cold. They're going to hustle, and people are afraid if I don't secure, your support to become the next majority leader, I'm going to miss that opportunity to the next guy.
Last question. Do we end up with a leadership that is more conservative than we currently have as a result of this shakeup?
It's hard to believe that that's not the case, given, knowing my former colleagues, knowing where the votes are. But we'll see. I mean, there are there's a core group of 40 or 50 very, very conservative lawmakers in the Republican conference that have been calling a lot of the tunes, but there's still, 200 others, and they have to decide, what direction they want the party to go in. But I would be shocked if there was not some demand that there be greater representation in the leadership for the conservative folks in the House.
Well, this is certainly something we're going to be watching closely over the next couple of weeks, and I'm sure we're going to be talking about it here more.
Oh, absolutely.
Thank you, Congressman LaTourette.
Thank you.